Minister of Tourism Patricia De Lille has defended her decision to dissolve the South African Tourism Board. Now, the board disbandment drew criticism from, amongst others, the Democratic Alliance and the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, who have accused the minister of political interference. Now, Minister De Lille dissolved the South African Tourism Board for allegedly breaching governance regulations, including the Tourism Act and the Public Finance Management Act. Minister De Lille also rejected claims that she is shielding the suspended SA Tourism CEO Nombulelo Guliwe, and she was speaking on the sidelines of a stakeholder meeting on the Tourism Growth Action Plan. Minister De Lille dissolved that board. Let's welcome her. She is in studio here with us this morning. Minister, good morning, and thanks for coming through.
Thank you.
So last night on SABC News, I'm not sure if you saw it, Lawson Naidu was on, and of course this story has really grabbed the attention of South Africa. But let's start at the beginning. Why did you decide to dissolve the board of SA Tourism?
Let me first say, Sakina, there's no crisis in tourism at all. Just yesterday, I engaged with Tourism Business Council, the whole sector, and we planned the implementation of a tourism partnership growth plan. So there's no crisis. The reason why I've dissolved the SAT board, it didn't start yesterday. I didn't wake up one morning and decided I'm going to dissolve them. I'm a fair person. I had a meeting with the board on the 4th of July. And I raised several issues with them that were outstanding that they were not attending to. Like, for instance, the SIU report came out in April of this year, and they haven't touched it. When I asked them, they claimed they never received it. We soon got the proof that they did receive it. The company secretary had 2 grievances against her that was not dealt with. That she complained about. I raised the issue of the procedures of when you exercise your fiduciary duties, you still have to follow due process. I raised it with them. The way they are operating is putting the entity at risk, because if a meeting is not convened in terms of the law, then you run the risk that even the decisions taken in such a meeting could be declared invalid. They admitted to it, and they promised that they will approve on that. Then, on the 31st of July, the previous board chair, Professor Davis, resigned in a board meeting, in their normal quarterly board meeting. They had discussed all the things. A couple of hours later, after the board resigned, on the 1st of August now, the chair resigned. They then convened a meeting or a round robin. They claimed there was no meeting on the 1st of August, but they sent a resolution falling out of the sky, I don't know, to say that they have now appointed Lawson Naidu as the representative of the board. There's no such thing exists. What they should have done was to say to me, Minister, we want to have an extraordinary meeting urgently around this issue. Please appoint an acting chair. They didn't do that. But because Lawson has been fighting with the previous chair, on numerous occasions, I had to intervene because he wanted to be the chairperson. And he saw this gap immediately, few hours after the professor resigned, appoint him as the representative, something that don't exist in law. I've got legal advice from senior counsel, and once I've got the legal advice from senior counsel, I acted on that. Mm. I have appointed a board in the interim, chaired by Dr. Masito. They will be meeting this Friday. And the CEO remains suspended because that has to be dealt with by the board. And she will have an opportunity to have these allegations branded around being tested.
Okay,
yes.
Few questions. Firstly, the CEO, the suspended CEO. The impression is created that you are protecting
Yes.
the suspended CEO, given this latest development, but also a previous one where you were said to have then dismissed people because of an adverse finding against the now suspended CEO. How do you respond to that?
Well, Sakina, I'm so glad for this opportunity, and I am very happy that I'm going to brief Parliament on the 2nd of September. With the real facts. You know, people are entitled to their opinions, but they're not entitled to their own facts. And this is what is happening here. There's a lot of noise now, a lot of opinions about things. So it's not true. I've got no reason to protect somebody. Because the law, again, if anybody's got a problem with the CEO, there are procedures and processes to follow. I can't just feel aggrieved and then complain about it but do nothing about it. So I'm really challenging those people. They had an opportunity while they were there. They should have dealt with the issue then. But they can't blame me for everything. They claim they've got fiduciary duties, but they want to use their fiduciary duties selectively. So really, Sakina, I'm not concerned. I'm not bothered one bit. I'm very positive after the meeting with the sector yesterday and the support from the sector.
So you are not protecting the suspended CEO?
No, I'm not protecting her at all. In fact, when I had a meeting with the board on the 4th of July, I also fought with the CEO because I said, here you've got a company secretary with 2 complaints, 2 grievances. Why did you and the board not respond? I said, this is unfair labor practice. I even said to them, I'm an ex-trade unionist and I will always fight for workers' rights. So I've not protected her at all. We went to Parliament recently on the first quarter performance of SAT. And they have spent about 97% of their first quarter budget. So they did make some progress. But then I'm accused if I do nothing. And if I do something, they say, oh, you're interfering. I'm not interfering. I must intervene as the executive authority when I see things are not going right.
Okay, to that point, they've spent almost all of their budget.
Yes.
How much of their targets have they achieved?
Well, that's the first quarter. The targets that they have achieved, if I can recall correctly, because it is the spend versus the implementation. I think that was also in the 90%. I'm just not, I can't remember the correct figure. But Sakina, I have been trying very hard to say that with the board, I've had several, even private meetings. When Lawson Naidu started fighting with the chairperson, he will just write a letter in a board meeting and tell the chairperson to sign them. I called the 2 of them together. And I said to Lawson, I'm not a messenger, repeat what you've said in front of the prof. And then we can find a solution. I like fairness, I don't want people to be unhappy, but this has been going on for months.
So the allegation is that there was a lack of confidence in the leadership of the board chairperson. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was aware of it. They've sent me letters and I've tried to intervene. I had meetings with the prof privately and with them. I even went too far as to say that, you know what, can't we just put up a WhatsApp group? If there's a lack of communication, will you guys mind to go onto a WhatsApp group with me? So that when there are instructions or requests to the chairperson and he's not implementing it, I can also see and I can talk to him. Yes, they did raise concerns. And he's a professor in governance and risk management. And very strict also to the rules and how a board must manage itself. And I left it to them to have these discussions. But Lawson continued, you know, challenging the prof at every single corner. because it became clear that he wanted to be the chairperson.
Why wasn't there a deputy chair on this board?
You know, Sakina, why I was able to appoint and board in the interim so quickly was that, and they were aware about it, I have already started the process to fill the vacancies on the board. Once I got the names and I interviewed the people, then there's a process of security clearance. And so 4 people went for security clearance, 3 of them were cleared. I had already booked the government gazette for that Friday, because you can only gazette on a Friday. And then this thing happened, whereby hours after the professor resigned on the 31st of July, they called this unauthorized meeting to select Lawson as a representative of the board.
So, with regard to that whole situation, you know, the legal advice that you sought,
Yes.
in return, with regard to responding to what was going on with the board, did the legal advice simply state that you should dissolve the board and there was no other measure that you could take to try and address what was going on?
Unfortunately, Sakina, when it comes to the law, ignorance of the law is no excuse. The provisions is very clear in the Tourism Act. And this was a clear violation of that. And you know, with legal people, it's one way or the other. And because I have gone on a record on a previous occasions, like the meeting with the board on the 4th of July, my legal advice from senior counsel was to say, Minister, those decisions that they have taken when they convened these unauthorized meetings, they could be challenged in a court of law later on because they didn't follow due process. When they want to call a special meeting and say there's an emergency, there are 2 ways. The one is the chairperson must then do a write to the board members, and if 2/3 of them agree, and he must give them 2 weeks' notice, then the chairperson can call a special board meeting. In this instance, there was no due process followed, even when the ex-chairperson was there, because he was the chairperson when I raised it with them on the first time. So I did try and bring some remedial action, but of course it didn't work.
So you're saying there was no intermediate, there was no other method except for you to dissolve that board. That was the only action legally available to you?
The only action legally available to me, that I can confirm, and that is on the advice of senior counsel. Because of the risk that it can pose to the organization when you are taking decisions in a board that was not constituted in terms of the Tourism Act. So it's like you're damned if you don't, and you're damned if you do. This is really the situation. Because now people are saying, accusing me that I'm in the habit of dissolving boards.
Yes, you're being accused of political overreach.
I have only dissolved 1 board. And by dissolving that board, with the Tottenham Hotspur's deal, we were able to save the country 1.3 billion rand. I took it further, and I've just been vindicated by the SIU in April this year. Say, Minister, you were right. These are the things, this is the actions that the current board must take against employees that's still in the organization. And the SIU went further to say that the previous board must be declared delinquent. That was the first time. The second time, I only removed a chairperson and a deputy chairperson. I allowed them to stay on the board. The reason for that was that the Portfolio Committee of Tourism raised the issue of board fees. I went to go and look into it, and I had a meeting with the board. I said, listen, you've been there for 6 months now. you've almost spent 900,000 Rand of your budget for board fees. And the board's response was, and I've got the recording, they said to me, Minister, but we've got 5 million Rand. I said, no, you do have 5 million Rand for the board activities, but only 1.4 million Rand is allocated for board fees. Then I could see, and again, this thing of, convening meetings at the drop of a head. So that is what happened in that instance. They choose to resign, and some other board members resigned, and I replaced them.
So now this matter will no doubt appear before the courts. You will be challenged in terms of the decision that you've taken. There's concern about the reputation of South African tourism as a result of this. And again, ministerial overreach on your part. What do you say to South Africa?
No overreach. I know my role. Fortunately, I was part of the people that wrote the constitution of this country. I know exactly in terms of Section 92 what is my role and function. People think, and they say I'm interfering.
Yes.
I'm interfering.
Are you interfering? Are you too intimately involved with the day-to-day running of South African tourism?
Not in the day-to-day running. I intervene. Like, for instance, when the allegations came about the chief marketing officer, 3 of them came at once. It came to me. I had to intervene and say to the board, please investigate. And the board, that was in June, they also ignored that. So no, Sakina, it's not a matter of overreach and all of that. The people always want to say politicians this and that. I know my role and I know my place. And I am waiting to go to the portfolio committee to explain and give the portfolio committee the proof and the interactions between myself and the board.
You did explain about the interim team that you've appointed, and we don't have time, but I just want to look at the activities of your department going forward. We are hosting G20, and of course, tourism a key part of this. So is this likely to impact or interfere negatively in any way with what your department has to do?
No, not at all. Already, if you go into the G20 website, you will see, in partnership with the private sector, there are many packages, for our delegates that come and visit to stay longer or to come earlier. I meet on a weekly basis with the tourism sector, with SAT, Tourism Business Council. No impact. Our investment summit is going ahead, the first inaugural one on tourism infrastructure. Our hackathon that we've done with 18 higher learning institutions is going ahead. The ministerial meeting is taking place on the 12th of September. So no, there's no impact whatsoever. I am meeting the board this coming Friday, or maybe early next week, and my first advice to them was that please familiarize yourself with the Tourism Act, with the Public Finance Management Act, with the board charter, with the King 4. There are such a lot of things that you need to read together. And maybe hopefully this time I'm lucky that we can just move on and I can start the procedure to advertise for a new board and then take those recommendations to Cabinet, Sakina.
Well, that's where we leave it. Minister Patricia De Lille, she's of course the Minister of Tourism in South Africa, speaking about the dissolution of the South African Tourism Board.